game. An NBA Finals 7th game. One game, the difference between basketball immortality and crushing disappointment. One game, a chance to become a legend, a hero, a champion.
What motivates me now more than ever is winning another championship.
It's going to take heart. It's going to take an uncanny amount of energy and strength.
To win a championship, it was one of the most emotional times of my life because that's what I play for.
One game, a chance for a legacy to grow. One final game, a season-long journey draws to a close.
Top of the world! Top of the world!
All right, and we are continuing talking about the best Game 7s in NBA Finals history. We are down to our number 4 choice of the Miami Heat taking on the San Antonio Spurs in the 2013 NBA Finals. The Heat winning 95-88, and this series is definitely best remembered for the remarkable Game 6, really one of the greatest NBA games in history. But Game 7 was pretty close.
Yeah, it got overshadowed a little bit by the Game 6, and rightfully so. I mean, like you mentioned, and that's not what this podcast is about. Is it talking Game 6? We should do that. The best Game 6s of all time. Well, that'll be our series next.
We'll look into that. Yeah.
But I mean, that's an incredible game. And then when it was over, like everybody was just sort of like worn out in a lot of ways. And I remember this Game 7 got really lost, and I remember watching it and really enjoying it. But it was like, it's not the same. Like, you were almost disappointed because it wasn't as incredible as that Game 6 was. Because as you said, like in my years of watching basketball, that might have been the most excited and most like I don't even know how to describe it. There's so many emotions in that. And I didn't really have a vested interest in either of those teams. But this Game 7 definitely deserves a little bit of credit as well. I mean, it was an absolutely spectacular one. And though, 95-88 doesn't sound very close, it felt a lot closer. And people that remember watching it remember that it was much closer than maybe that score indicates. And that's why it's, our 4th, Game 7 of all time. Because it's a spectacular game. It's a really, really great game.
Yeah, and neither team had a bigger lead than 7 points throughout. I mean, the Spurs were up 7, pretty early on in the first quarter, I think midway through the first. And then the Heat were only up by 7 at the very end. So, I mean, it really was a 2-point game going into the with 24 seconds left. And then LeBron, after Duncan, he misses a pretty easy layup, and then misses the follow-up tip in like a 2-footer in the lane. And then the Heat get the ball. I think Bosh got the rebound, and then they end up calling a timeout. And LeBron just hits a deadly jumper right on Kawhi Leonard to put the Heat up by 4. And then after that, on the Spurs' next chance, Manu Ginobili sort of drives near the basket, gets under the basket, sort of throws a wild pass, and LeBron catches it, and then hits free throws to basically seal the game from there. But while I agree with what you're talking about, how it did seem like these teams were emotionally spent, it did still, it really felt like a hard-fought, intense, well-played game, despite that feeling of not quite, even though there's a sense of not quite adding up to Game 6, it's still it was a stronger, more intense game than I kind of recall it being, even though I did recall it being very good. And obviously it ranks highly in our list of games.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember that series for a few different things. And you mentioned, and specifically this game as well, you mentioned the Manu Ginobili and his, he had a lot of kind of issues in big stretches throughout that series. There was one time, I forgot, he dribbled off his foot or something like that, if I remember correctly. I don't recall what game that was, maybe Game 6. And then this one, as you mentioned as well, that was patently, he gets down there, he's down below the basket, and then he just tosses it away, and it's damn, and that it seals it for Miami, and just seals it for LeBron. But man, the one thing I also remember is just how good LeBron James was during this entire series and during this entire year. I really think, looking at his career, and we're starting, we're getting to a point, obviously these finals, the ones that are, going on right now, or, by the time you listen to this could possibly be over, we're seeing, monumentally great performances from him in that too. But I just remember this year as being just, I don't know if we're going to see a better year from LeBron James, or a better, series, or just a better playoffs, or just anything from LeBron. I mean, this was the peak efficiency years of LeBron, where it was just like unbelievable the stuff he was able to do, and how efficient he was able to be that year. So.
Yeah, and he 25 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, 2.3 steals for the playoffs on 45% shooting, 35% from 3-point line. He really delivered some, and this was like early on in the series. The Spurs had the strategy of sort of letting him take the jumpers, and his jumpers were a little bit off kind of early on in the series. There were a couple of there's one just huge blowout Spurs win. The Spurs won by almost 40 in the series. But then, eventually LeBron just trusted his jumper Wade to a certain extent as well, and they made him pay, and they won 2 very close games. They were down 3-2 in the series, and were able to rally get the final 2 games at home in very close fashion and win the series.
Absolutely. And the Heat, a little nugget here, the Heat were the 4th team to win the NBA title by coming back from 3-2. So, and win the final 2 games at home as well, which is another little caveat. The only people to do that were the LA Lakers in 88 and 2010, and then the Houston Rockets in 1994, series we talked about not that long ago. So definitely interesting. And then, James, he secures the finals MVP. He has 37 points, 12 rebounds. The other remarkable thing, though, too, is if you watch the highlights, and if you guys remember the games as well, is that he's guarding Tony Parker during a lot of it and shutting Tony Parker down in a lot of ways, which is, we talk about LeBron and just what a rare talent he is and how fun it is. I mean, this is a guy who at any given time can guard a center or stick with, one of the fastest, cagiest point guards in the league, too. It's just incredible what he can do, and just appreciate, the amount of skills he has, not only offensively, but defensively as well. That's where I've always really enjoyed watching LeBron is what he can do defensively.
Yeah, he's just fantastic on both ends, and I think you're right. Just kind of at the peak of his powers here. He tied Tommy Heinsohn's record for most points in an NBA Finals Game 7 win with 37 points, 12 rebounds. Parker was 3 for 12 from the field, only 10 points, -8 for the game, I believe. And Spurs were pretty much powered by Duncan, who had 24 and 12. Kawhi Leonard, who had 19 points and 16 rebounds. Of course, Leonard would be the MVP of the finals of the next season, which would be the rematch between the Spurs and the Heat, which the Spurs would win fairly easily.
And this was kind of his coming out party as well, this series, if people remember correctly. I mean, in this game, he played 45 minutes, and Pop really started to be trusting him at a different level that would lead to the Kawhi Leonard we know today, because we sort of take it for granted that he came in with, he was still very raw at this point. And then this was, I think, this playoff series in general. And then was really the time when you started seeing that, hey, this guy's pretty good. This guy's got some talent. And, as you said, it would lead, next year to him becoming the finals MVP. So.
Yeah, and Wade also, had 23 and 10, and he had was up and down throughout the series. Bosh actually famously didn't score a point, but was just so good defensively that he was able to kind of contribute without scoring. Even though he struggled from that, and he was still a net positive because of just the his ability to play both interior and and go out on shooters and defend real well. And I guess the surprise star of the game was Shane Battier, who was 6 from 8 from 3. And he, if I recall correctly, he had really struggled with his outside shot for a lot of the playoffs. Yes. So this was kind of like Mike Miller did a similar thing the year before, where he had kind of struggled for most of the playoffs, and then he had just a breakout Game 5 against the Thunder, and for the Heat to win their first championship. And then Battier kind of did a similar thing on this season.
Yeah, I'm firing up the Battier game logs here because I remember it just being really bad for him, if I remember correctly. I guess it wasn't as bad. Oh no, it was bad in the earlier seasons, or the earlier series rather. And then in the finals, he got it together. Yeah, there's a bunch of clunkers here against Milwaukee. 1 of 7, 2 of 7, 1 of 6, 2 of 7, 0 of 4, 0 of 2. So yeah, but the finals though he the first game 0 of 3. This is all from 3. Second game 1 of 3. Third game 0 of 2, 0 of 1, and then something got clicked or someone figured it out in the last 3 games because 2 of 6 in game 5. 3 of 4 in game 6, and then of course the 6 of 8 from game 7, and then of course a celebratory Denny's dinner as he always did.
Yeah,
which I don't know if you remember that, his tweeting out of his him and his like family at Denny's, which is the greatest way to celebrate an NBA championship. Everybody else is going to clubs, and he's deciding what to get on his make your own breakfast. But that's I don't know if he got. I can't confirm or deny that if he got breakfast or the dinner. I would hope he got the breakfast at Denny's. But
you would want to have a Grand Slam breakfast after winning an NBA championship. That would just make sense.
Right. Exactly. Right. Yeah. Would you have you ever? Because I've never personally ate. Have you ever ate the non-breakfast food at Denny's? Because I always just get the breakfast, regardless of what hour.
I probably have, but I don't specifically remember. Like I've been to Denny's like maybe 3 times in my life, so
yeah, I'm not a fan either. There's so many like little breakfast places I would rather go to, or like things owned by Greek people that I don't know if you guys have those. We have tons of Greek-run breakfast restaurants that are open like till ungodly hours of the day, and those are always superior to obviously Denny's. So
yeah, we have some Greek restaurants, but none that I recall that specialize in breakfast. Although that's something off to.
Oh, it must be a Chicago thing then. We have like everywhere. Every town has like 6 of them, and they're like everywhere, and they're all like they're all the same, and they're all owned by like the guys that look the same, even though like you assume they're all brothers or whatever. They're all fantastic, and this has nothing to do with Game 7, so I guess we should move on. But I enjoy breakfast food. All right,
we're learning about things. I like breakfast food as well. It's a delight. It's my favorite meal of the day. So
absolutely.
All right, I guess
I just don't eat it all the time. But
well,
who's got time? Who's got time to make eggs in the morning? Come on.
No, I just have a good bowl of oatmeal. It makes me happy. Yeah. So cup of coffee. I'm a simple man. Right. Simple pleasures. Yeah. So game 3, our selection for the third choice for our Game 7 series. Boston Celtics against Los Angeles Lakers. This is the last time.
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Who would have thought? So how many times did we say them officially then? It's this is our final time. What was it? 7?
I don't think it was quite that many, but it was a lot. Yeah, it was too many. Yeah, it was. What would have been 4 of them in the 60s, I believe, and or maybe just 3 of them in the 60s. The 2010, 84. So I don't know, 6 or 7, a high amount, that's for sure.
I'm sick of them.
Yeah, well, we're done after this.
Yeah.
So.
Thank God.
This is although we do actually get the Celtics and the Lakers again. After
I was going to say we're not really done with them.
It's not against each other.
No.
This is the second of 7 finals victories by the Celtics over the Lakers during the Bill Russell era, yes, that's right. Yeah, and the first finals for the Lakers in the city of Los Angeles. They, of course, had moved from Minneapolis a couple years before. This was the 5th title in a row for the Celtics and the 6th out of 7. They won this game in overtime, 110-107. Elgin Baylor having 41 and 22 in this game. And he had a finals record 61 points in Game 5 of the series, which the Lakers had won in Boston. It actually went back to L.A. in Game 7, or excuse me, Game 6, and the Lakers laid an egg and then went back to Boston, and Boston won Game 7 as well. So yeah, they were up 3-2 in this series. They definitely had a chance to make it happen, but it did not for them. But Baylor was only 41 and 18 in the series with 3.7 assists and 43% shooting, which was pretty good in this era.
Just doesn't know how to win, though. That's the problem.
He did not know how to win. Yeah,
not clutch. Yeah. It's very much a Baylor and West team when you look at, especially at the box score of this Game 7. It's like 41 for Baylor, 35 for West, and then a whole pile of nothing. I mean, Selvy gets 10. Krebs gets 8, but it's the rest of it is nothing. It's those 2 guys just leading the charge, and those 2 are the all-time greats or whatever. But it's just not enough compared with that Boston team. I mean, there's just too much firepower on that Boston team.
Yeah, I mean, the Lakers did have good like role players, like LaRusso was kind of like a good defensive player. I think he actually may have made some all-star teams. Like he was maybe a little better than that, but he wasn't a scorer. That wasn't his role, which is fine. I mean, the Lakers obviously had some incredible teams. Jerry West made 8 finals in his career, only won 1, but and they just ran into the Celtics a whole bunch of times, and no one was beating the Celtics because they were awesome. So. But yeah, and Baylor, during this year, he was in the Army Reserve, so he was only like a part-time player. He wasn't able to, train like he usually was. He even said, there's a really cool, like a show, like a PBS Kurt Gowdy hosted show in the middle of the 1970s, talking to Baylor and Frank Selvy and Hot Rod Huntley and Red Auerbach and Cousy and Heinsohn about going back to this game and showing highlights from the series and just kind of going back through, and it was just kind of interesting to see what everyone said, and it was kind of neat to see them in the middle of the 70s talking about something that happened 15 years or so before that. But not to be outdone, Bill Russell only had 30 points and 40 rebounds in this game. Sam Jones with 27 and 8, Frank Ramsey with 23 and 5. So they weren't bad either. They had some pretty strong moments there. But I guess the guy who this game is most famous for is Frank Selvy.
Yes,
yeah, it's the Frank Selvy game.
One of many Frank Selvy games.
Yeah,
in the future that I'm sure we'll talk about, but no.
Sure. So the Celtics are up by 4. There's a minute to go. It looks like they're going to win, but then Selvy hit a layup around Russell to put them down by 2, and then Jerry West gets a steal. He grabs and then he misses the shot, but then Selvy grabs the offensive rebound and hits another close shot to tie it. And then the Celtics miss again. Selvy has a chance to. Selvy has a no problem. Selvy has a chance to win it. He takes a pass from Hot Rod Huntley, but then misses like a 15-foot baseline shot, which apparently was his shot that rimmed out right as the buzzer sounded. And it's funny because Chick Hearn actually makes a mistake in the commentary, thinking that the game is over, but then realizing, oh yeah, we're going to overtime. But unfortunately for the Lakers, it was basically over at that point.
Yeah, it's a good look too, and if you watch, there's some videos on YouTube as well of kind of breaking down this final shot and breaking down everything about it. And you get to a point where Selvy gets a great shot. It's a great look. He's pretty open. He takes it. There's sort of rumors or whatever that Cousy, and Cousy does kind of get him on the elbow a little bit. That sort of affects it. And then I know Elgin Baylor has a quote as well that he was shoved from behind. I've watched the video like 7 times, like this is a Zapruder film, and I think Elgin's lying about that he was in perfect position for a rebound and he got shoved into the referee or whatever. And if you watch, like he really wasn't anywhere near there, but it's okay, Elgin. That's fine. You did an okay job. But Selvy had a good look. Selvy had a great look.
Yeah, I didn't really see that either. But yeah, I mean, Elgin did enough in this game for him to certainly hang his head high, but at the there's
a good fourth quarter as well. I mean, that's a guy too who's going to be remembered, or is remembered rather, for kind of missing that shot. But there was a lot of stuff he did to get them in there and get them to that point where they were tied to go in overtime. So that's worthwhile to kind of mention as well. So, and it's a good look too. I mean, it's a look that probably 9 times out of 10, and that's what everybody said is that that's his shot, that's his look, and it's point blank, it's right on target, and it just it just doesn't go in sometimes. Life sucks, especially when you're playing with Jerry West in the finals. But
yeah, there you go. What can you do? So Heinsohn and Ramsey end up fouling out, and so Russell is there to kind of pick up the scoring slack. There's highlights of him getting a give and go with Cousy, I believe, or maybe it might have been another Celtic guard. I think it was Cousy, yeah. And then the Celtics are also able to pull ahead after Sam Jones hits a couple of jumpers, including one that put them up 109-103, and basically ended the Lakers' chances. And then there's the famous image of Bob Cousy sort of burning time off the clock at the end of the overtime by dribbling around the backcourt, and then the crowd, as they were wont to do during this era, up until the 80s, would then rush the court as the play is ending. So.
And sometimes ruin the final possession of the game.
Yeah,
we've seen multiple times. That's one of the themes of watching these, because we have a playlist together. You created of all these game 7s or whatever, and you see the final 10 seconds is just always a mess. There's a famous one where Magic Johnson and the crew has to be like, guys, get off the court so we can finish this game. And then there's one we're going to talk about in our final episode too, where. There's still time on the clock, and the crowd's just decided, no, we're going to take over the court now, and then the game's just kind of over, and it's just well, okay, that's fine, I guess. But this one, I mean, it was over, but yeah, it's a very funny, and it's an image you've seen 10,000 times. As Cousy, very close to the ground, dribbling, in circles to put a finale on or put a final touch on the game. But definitely a great game, and definitely one well worth our ranking as we have it. Not in the top 2, but certainly. Well worth being top 5.
Absolutely. I guess I believe this was the first overtime NBA Finals Game 7, if I'm not mistaken. Frank Selvy had a interesting little career. It just kind of shows you the way the league was during this time, but he began his career for the old Baltimore Bullets in 1955, but that was the year that the Baltimore Bullets disbanded after 14 games. So he ended up after that on the Milwaukee Hawks, who moved to St. Louis the next year, and then he misses a year because of military service. And then the following year, he splits between St. Louis and Minneapolis, and then he goes to the Knicks for a season, and then he splits the next season between Syracuse and then another year in Minneapolis, and then he ends up moving with the Lakers to Los Angeles and spends 4 years there. He's actually a 2-time All-Star, including this season with the Lakers. He was 29 years old, so it's one of those kind of just. You're part of the league, and you're just not that guys don't bounce around today, but there haven't been any teams that have disbanded 14 games in the 14 games since then. So and having to go from.
I mean, hypothetically, the Sixers do that, but not That's
right, yeah, not an actual.
They still play the games though, yes.
They do play the games, yes.
Yeah, you don't get pulled out of military service either. I don't believe. Although Andrew Bogut any minute now, when next time Australia invades somebody, I'm sure Bogut will be front of the line to
he'll be anxious to go. Yeah, he's not much use in the series at this point. So
exactly right. So he will be more than happy to serve his native land. But no, that's just the interesting path again, disbanding. Yeah. And then, it's just interesting because we always hear that comment. Oh, back in my day, players stayed with their teams or whatever. But your teams kind of went away sometimes too, and couldn't pay the bills. So our teams can pay the bills. Old man,
that's true. Yeah,
hypothetical grandpa I'm arguing with. So
right. I'm sure hypothetical grandpa is listening to this one right now, and
absolutely he loves podcasts.
Yeah, he does. He loves podcasts. We're recording this right before Game 6 of the final. So of course, Bogut's probably gonna score gonna score
30
15 and have 30 rebounds or something. Yeah, right. And so we'll look silly, but what happens?
That's fine. Hey, we're out there with bold predictions. What's your bold prediction for this game that that by the time everybody listens to it will have already happened?
I feel like it's going to be close, but that the Warriors will pull it out in Game 6 to win the series.
I believe they will as well. So we will see.
All right,
I hope we're wrong, just so everybody can laugh.
I would love a Game 7. I would actually.
And part of me, I really want the Warriors to win. I really do, because I actually generally like the Warriors. And would love to see, it's symbolic for us because our first podcast ever was about Rick Barry, and that was the last time the Warriors or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, the fact that we're doing a series right now, but NBA Finals Game 7, it would be kind of cool if it went to Game 7. It'd be it would really help our advertising to be like, hey, here's an NBA Finals Game 7. Oh, wait a minute, what is this? 7 8 podcasts about NBA Finals Game 7s? That's weird. So that'll be fun. But
it would be nice.
So I don't know. I'm torn.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So I'm a little torn, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think honestly, if the Warriors win the series, you could basically give us credit for that by, our Rick Barry podcast. I think
right. They haven't won any other year, and every other year we haven't done a podcast about Rick Barry. So
that makes sense.
It's put 2 and 2 together, people. It's right there in front of you. So yes, I am personally taking credit for it. So it's all right.
Yeah. I think either way, either team winning is a good story and great for their fan bases who have suffered through a lot. So
exactly, right, and that's the other thing too. A part of me is also like, yeah, it wouldn't be the worst if Cleveland won, as well. It would fit the story, it'd fit the narrative, but I really want I don't know. I'm very jaded. I'm just happy. Everybody have a good time and nobody get hurt. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, it would be cool for it would be a fun story if the Warriors won this year and then Cleveland gets Irving and Love back and sort of figures out, okay, we have this interesting identity we forged during the finals, but now we have like a great talent back. Let's we kind of figured out a template here, and let's go and make a run and be really motivated all season, and then and try to get a rematch if possible. Not that both teams wouldn't have to go through a lot to do that, but you could see that being something to look forward to next season. So
certainly, like sort of the Miami Big Three model, where it's like, okay, we were kind of weird at first, we got it now, we're good, let's go, and then
right. When Bosch's injury kind of forced them to have figure out their identity, you could see that kind of being a similar thing here. Whether Love would fit that or is a question for other people, but that's something I can think of. Of course, as a Hawks fan, I would be disappointed because I'm perpetually disappointed because our teams tend to suck. But I think we should close this one out, Rich, and I think we should get to our final show on the game.
Yes.
Before we do something.
The big countdown. I wonder if people are guessing right now and plotting and scheming and wondering what are those last 2 games? What are those final 2? You could probably guess pretty easily.
I mean, we did all of them, so I would think.
I would hope that. But I mean, that's a lot of effort. That's a lot of effort to look up a Wikipedia or whatever. I mean, who wants to do that? Who's got time for that?
Who's got time for that? Indeed. So, all right, everyone. Well, we'll be back in your earballs soon.